As we're going up to Hanukkah, I thought it would be nice to post a little video about the festival, and in particular about the kind of Jew who was a typical Hashmonaim supporter, as opposed to the kinds of Jews who were supportive of the oppressors of the Jewish people, who are known as Mizyavenim, sorry, those who took on the Greek perspective of life. I often write in my books about outstanding people I've met, but the subject of this video was born in 1860 and passed away in 1930, so I couldn't possibly have met him. But he's been a hero of mine for a very long time. Tragically today, his name is almost unknown by his own people. Yet if anybody embodied the kind of Jew who would not compromise his faith, and would have joined the Hashmonaim to fight at the time of the Hanukkah story to liberate their base, Hamikdash, their holy temple. This man did. He also contributed to the world of medicine more than almost anybody else. Lord Joseph Lister, the pioneer of antiseptics and surgery, said about him, he was a savior of humanity. So he was a Hanukkah Jew and a savior of humanity. His name was Sir Waldemar Mordechai Wolff Haffkine, and he was born in Ukraine, one of 5 children. His mother died in his 7th birthday, and his father was often away from home, leaving the children at home to be cared by others, which gave him a rather lonely childhood. Mordechai Wolff's family was Orthodox. In a life where he travelled the globe and made medical discoveries that would save millions of lives. As he wrote about himself, he never allowed his connection to Shmiras and Mitzvahs, the observance of Jewish law and practice, to weaken. He studied at the University of Odessa, and through the encouragement of Nobel Prize winner biologist Eli Menchenkov, also a Jew, dedicated his life to science. The Jewish heart of Haffkine always beat to a rhythm which echoed the Hanukkah story. While the young man was shining in his studies at university, he joined the Jewish League for Self-Defense in Odessa. He was even injured while defending a Jewish home during a pogrom. His university recognized his brilliance, offering him a professorship. The offer came with a condition. Haffkine, the Jew, was welcome, as long as he converted to the Russian Orthodox Church. This condition would be familiar to Jews under the domination of the Greeks in the Hanukkah story. They too were welcomed into non-Jewish Greek society as long as they renounced their Jewish identity. Mordechai Wolff refused and eventually followed his old mentor to the Pasteur Institute in Paris, where he researched preventative medicine. One of the deadliest diseases in the world at the time was cholera. In 1892, that's going back a bit, at only 32 years old, during an outbreak of the terrible disease, Mordechai Wolff Haffkine successfully developed a vaccine and experimented on himself to prove its effectiveness. The anti-Semitism that dogged his early academic life returned as Europe's medical establishment sought to cast doubts on the significance of the breakthrough of this Jewish doctor. India was then ruled by Britain, and had seen hundreds of thousands of people die due to cholera. And Haffkine was invited to take his vaccine there to prove its effectiveness. As soon as he arrived, he established a laboratory. By 1902, over 500,000 people were inoculated and their lives saved. Ironically, Mordechai Wolff Haffkine's greatest achievement was to develop a vaccine for a disease the Jews had been blamed for throughout the century. The Black Death, or the Gebiz, real name bubonic plague. This scourge produced 3 catastrophic pandemics. In the 6th century, an estimated 25 million people died. During the Middle Ages, the second pandemic claimed 50 million victims, with 60% of Europe's population dying. The third pandemic was in the 19th century. Jews, of course, as you probably know, were claimed to be poisoning the wells that caused all those deaths. The fact that they were dying in the Jews themselves were dying in equal or greater number than their Christian neighbors, didn't affect this lie in the slightest. When have Jew haters ever been interested in the truth or facts? Speak to the cretins in Iran and Iran's useful idiots on American university campuses today for a modern illustration. In 1896, at the invitation of the country's governor, Mordechai Wolff Haffkine travelled to Mumbai, India, where bubonic plague was raging. He immediately improvised a laboratory in a corridor of Grant Medical College with a staff of one clerk and 3 servants, and began experimenting and using his new anti-bubonic plague vaccine on laboratory animals. A few months later, Haffkine was convinced of the efficacy of his vaccine on animals. On January the 10th, 1897, a doctor agreed to inoculate him in secret, and the principal of the college agreed to be a witness. Haffkine, the Jew, whose people had been blamed for and slaughtered for causing bubonic plague, volunteered as the guinea pig and proved that his vaccine worked. Nonetheless, anti-Semitism pursued him once more. In 1902, after receiving his cholera vaccine, 19 people died. Haffkine was suspended. An inquiry commissioned indicted Haffkine, and he was relieved of his position and returned to England. The report was nicknamed the Little Dreyfus Affair, emphasizing that Haffkine's Jewish background and religion was the real cause of his removal. London's Lister Institute reinvestigated the original charge and overruled the verdict. It was discovered that an assistant used a dirty bottle cap without sterilizing it, and Haffkine was reinstituted and reinstated. Obviously, in writing about Walter Haffkine, I cannot report what he said when I asked him a question or when I asked him to share an incident from his life. Instead, I'll take his own words from a small pamphlet that he wrote in 1916, 14 years before his passing. He called it A Plea for Orthodoxy. In it, this savior of humanity, who refused to give up his faith, argues for the Amunah, for the faith, and the Torah, the Jewish Bible that so many in the Channukah story gave away. His fluent English is extremely sophisticated, and unsurprisingly, it is in the style of the 19th century. Nevertheless, I think it gives you a flavor of a Jew who would have stood up to fight with the Hashmonaim to protect our Masara, our traditions, as he did to protect Jews during a pogrom. It also lets you hear his own voice speaking proudly as a Jew over 100 years later. When he discusses the most essential elements that have kept the Jewish people, Klal Yisrael, alive and vibrant, he writes, the knowledge of how to keep a community like ours together in spirit, while physically scattered throughout the world, has been carefully handed down to us by our ancestors, saying, and you will speak the words of Torah when you're in your homes, and when you're traveling on a journey, and when you're lying down, and waking up. In other words, of course, the classic words of the classic Jewish prayer, the Shema. The speaking of who and what we are and what we believe in has to be a constant, has to permeate every aspect of our speech and our discussion and our waking minds. In discussing Jewish dress, I'm wearing this remarkable Jewish dress at the moment. When we see a man keeping the traditional attire of a Jew, or a Jewess wearing in an alien environment the wig of an Orthodox married woman, there's no need to ask if they acknowledge allegiance to their people. About science, he declares, alone of all the religions and philosophies, the faith which binds together the Jews has not been harmed by the advance of research, but on the contrary, it has been vindicated in all its profoundest tenets. Slowly and by degrees, science is being brought to recognize the existence of one power which has no beginning and no end. The sum total of the scientific discovery of our lands confirm the world's recognition of the words of our prayer, Adon Olam, the prayer that says that there is a God and he controls everything and created everything. The year before his death, in 1929, he created the Haffkine Foundation, which still exists, to help Eastern European yeshivas and Talmudim and their students. He bequeathed the foundation his personal fortune of $500,000 in today's money, that would be something like 7,613,000. That's an interesting figure. $684. Huge amount. In 1925, the Plague Research Institute that he founded in Mumbai was renamed the Haffkine Institute, and it still bears that name. He received many honors and titles during his lifetime, but we, as people, should have had another. Mordechai Wolff Haffkine, a Channukah Jew. I hope you find hearing about him as inspirational as I have. And I hope it gives us, in these times, when so many Jews are being asked to follow the path of the Misyavnim, those who would reject their people and their faith and embrace our people's enemies, I hope you'll find his reaction appealing and make it very clear to other people that it's your reaction to. I wish you a happy Hanukkah.